Okay, and you just started, and now my computer's frozen.
Oh, no.
You are live.
Hold on 1 second. I just need to be able to connect to pull up our agenda.
So I'm going to try to make it a year without breaking a bone.
That's always a good policy.
Awesome. Let's call to order the Housing and Human Welfare Committee meeting. The time is 6:46 p.m. We'll start with a roll call with Alderwoman Ellie Tierney from Ward 1.
Here.
Alderman Brooke Schandelmeyer from Ward 5.
Here.
And myself from Ward 6 present. We'll move on to the approval of agenda, but before we approve the agenda, I'd like to make a motion to amend the agenda.
Okay.
Can we have discussion before amending, Takia?
Sorry, my computer was frozen. Yes, you can discuss it before you make the motion.
Awesome. I appreciate that. So I want to amend the agenda to add at the end of our meeting discussion as it relates to the Housing and Human Welfare Committee pushing for a closed session public safety committee meeting. Obviously, we are not public safety, but we are Housing and Human Welfare, and public safety is a significant role in housing and human welfare. And I think that it's important for us to have dialogue amongst the council as it relates to some of the solutions for some of the crime that we've seen lately. I know my colleagues here on the Housing and Human Welfare Committee have been extremely proactive in providing ideas, solutions, and in general, just being supportive of conversation as it relates to public safety. And so I'd just like to make a motion that we add an item for discussion as it relates to a closed public safety meeting at the end of the agenda.
Point of clarification, Mr. Chairman. So
Yes.
are you talking just like a joint session with us and public safety, or are we going to ask public safety to host one specifically?
Yeah, well, I think that we get a letter signed off by the three of us that are on this committee to both the public safety chair and the mayor requesting a closed session as it relates to public safety. It takes 5 to call for a closed session. And so the three of us plus 2, the public safety committee chair and the mayor would be a total of 5 votes. And I'm hoping that we could do so, within maybe next 3 weeks. Obviously, looking at the calendar right now, it's March the 21st. If we could have something set up the latest by the week of the 4th through the 8th, that would be great.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I will second your motion to amend.
Oh, Takia has her hand up.
Thank you. So I just want to clarify, you're not asking for a closed session of the Public Safety Committee. You're asking for a closed session of the City Council.
Yes. Oh, hold on. Now I'm on 2.
Yeah, you have to get off of 1.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Perfect. Yeah, it'd be great if we could maybe as a body call for the council to meet. But I think, again, obviously, it's better to do so as a group than alone. But we can have discussion on it. I don't want to force anybody's opinion.
No,
Yes.
that's fine. I just wanted to clarify it for the minutes. You're not
Okay.
asking for public safety, because what you described sounds like an emergency meeting. So when you need 5 people.
Well, it's kind of what we want.
Yeah,
And that's exactly why I want the clarification.
I know, but
You're asking for a city council, not of a public safety committee.
yeah, and I think you're absolutely right, Takia. The code does say that 5 council is endorsing that it's emergency special meeting. And so I guess that is what I would ask that we vote on later tonight. As a body, would we be supportive of asking the council to do so?
I will second the motion to amend the agenda, and we can have the discussion at the end of the meeting.
Yeah. So ask all in favor.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 And again, we're just adding an item to the agenda, nothing in concrete yet. Next item on the agenda is approval of the minutes. We'll approve the minutes from our Housing and Human Welfare meeting on 2/22/22, which was a good day.
So moved.
Second.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next item up on the agenda is committee presentations. And I think this kind of segues in perfect with the conversation that we were having. We have ID 4322 presentations from the No Harm VIP program. Just background, we had this group come before us at the 2/22/22 meeting, but they had limited time to present. And so we're extending an opportunity to present today and really just get clarity on what the program needs as it relates to financial and even vocal support from the council in our hopes of just trying to get some things as it relates to public safety fast-tracked. Again, we are not public safety, but Housing and Human Welfare has a large portion to do with that. And so we'd like to hear from the staff. So I'll turn it over to the staff and then open it up to questions from my colleagues.
A greeting, council. Apologize for the camera. I have almost a doctor's appointment. As I've said before, No Harm was funded through the city up until June of last year, and we've been seeking funding. And so most recently, we submitted a proposal to the Anne Arundel County Health Department to fund the program after several meetings with the health officer and their members. So now we are awaiting a agreement potentially from them, but we still, would like to consider the opportunity to have the program funded in part even by the city. As far as the proposal goes, we asked that the city be able to provide funding for the actual logistics programming, where the bulk of the funding will come from for the salary to come from the county. But so I, really wanted to see what questions y'all had and see, how I can, further explain the program.
All right, let's start with the committee. All right, I see Alderman Schandelmeyer first. Questions, and then we'll go to Alderwoman Tierney.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So Tola, going through the council, so you've been reaching out to Anne Arundel County as well for paying the staff. How much funding would you be seeking from the city to effectively be able to go out into these communities and do your work?
So I would say on the low end, and this as far as, you mean not salaries or anything, just program funding?
Assuming the county is going to be paying salaries as you suggested,
yes.
How much would be for the program? And okay. I don't know if you've been, I guess if the county decides to not pay salaries, how much would you need?
So I would say effectively to hire, let's just say, all things going well, we get funding from the county, and we would be seeking funding from the city to handle programming. I would say it would be about $50,000, roughly. Now, if we were to not get the funding and the city would be, be able to fund it, we asked roughly that the salary, the salary was roughly about $330,000 a year. from the county. So, all things, if all things were great, I would, ask for that from the city. But even having one person or two, I think will be more effective. Particularly, I'm using the model of our Naptown anti-dope movement, where we used to just have money spent on programming, but we were able to hire one person this year, and we've been able to really grow that program, just having one person dedicated to that outreach and programming.
And Tola, just really quickly before I jump back to the alderman, just state your title and role. I'm sorry.
I apologize. My name is Adetola Ajayi, African American Community Service Specialist for the Mayor's Office.
And I have one more question, Mr. Chairman, if you will indulge me. So this kind of violence prevention outreach that you guys would be trying to accomplish could hypothetically fall under like some police department funding. Have you guys worked with the Annapolis PD to try to secure funding through that way? Do you need the council to come in and just okay that because that's just how the system works?
Because I've looked at some things since I've been here around that, and I think with the new, I'll say it wasn't really effective with the last police chief. I think these type of opportunities could happen under the new chief direction, because like you said, there's funding available to come through the police for, potentially to support this program. So I'm open to that. I haven't had a discussion about that. But I will say that, with the LEAD program, that's our office directly working with the APD for this diversion program, right? But we, as the mayor's office, got the funding from the state. So, but like I said, it was directly to support the APD program, to create a diversion program with APD. So I'm open to the discussion and, the opportunity to, collaborate on funding. Or even to, I don't know if they have any funding that they could put towards it, but, I would be open to that.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Great questions, Alderman, and we'll definitely come back to those. Alderwoman Tierney?
Yeah, thank you. And that was one of my questions too, as far as working with the police. This program is huge. I mein, it is not getting the money it deserves. The key word is violence interruption program. It's to interrupt program. It's to have people that have been there, done that, to get to people in these communities and say, you don't want to go there. And you got to get in there and you've got to get people hired to do that. It's almost like an infiltration, if you will. But what's frustrating for me, and I know not frustrating for me, that's the wrong way of putting it. Come budget time, we're going to get, I don't know what Rhonda's working on, something from Parks and Recs, something from here, something from there. And some way we have to all be in the room and have this, full court press and not all be doing our own thing. And I think that this has to be part of that, and it has to be accepted by the police department. And that's our goal. And Brooks is right about, the financing. And the other thing, and I should know this, but I don't, the opioid settlement, my understanding is just like the ARPA money, which I think is really frustrating for all of us, is that money, I think, is going to go into the general fund and then have it there and then, where it can be. It's not earmarked for these kind of programs that I'm thinking could be.
The council can change that, though, Alderwoman. I think.
I don't know. Why is that? Yeah, because then how do you know where it's going? I don't know.
And I think that's the important thing, that, we're stuck in a very difficult situation here. Obviously, with the budget process beginning here in the next couple of weeks,
Right.
most departments wouldn't be funded until after July 1. That would include this programming here or any programming that we have for public safety. And so I think that is and I hate to jump ahead, but to what we were discussing and adding to the agenda, that's part of the conversation that we have in a closed session is what are the axes that individual colleagues may have as it relates to funding for public safety? It has to be a priority for us, even as the alderman from Ward 5 suggested. If we can't do the salaries, let's do the programming. To get something going in the communities. As you mentioned, the AARP funding, and I'm not sure as it relates to the opioid funding because the details on that has not yet been released. I know it's $31 million over 18 years, which would have county than us.
Well, and maybe it's better that it, in a way, sorry to interrupt. It's better that it's not earmarked in a way because it then we could get it here instead of just strictly for opioids, So anyways, it's money coming in, which is always good. So I'm sorry to interrupt. So let's look at it that way.
I think that's great that you raised that point. And just quickly, Tola, I'll turn it over to you before I mention to my colleague. The end game will be just making sure, obviously, as we all know, it takes 5 to do anything. And so I think that's why we're having these conversations earlier, highlighting, some of the issues that we've had. As Tola has mentioned, the program hasn't been funded for almost a year. And so maybe I think we think of what interactive or and proactive resources we could have had in the community over this past last year if we would have done a pilot or set it up. Tola, please, quickly, and then I'll turn it right back over to Alderwoman Tierney.
Yep. Real quickly, I just wanted to say that, the way we were able to kind of do double, use the opioid programming money to push the message of violence intervention is because we created a strategy of harm reduction being more than just opioid overdoses. And putting violence under the kind of the category of harm reduction, allowing you to kind of have some leeway and letting us do this type of programming. But we also wanted to focus on homeless prevention as well.
Okay. So what was it, January? So when you kind of piloted this, how much staff did you get? I don't even know the answer to that.
We started with 2 people. Erica Griswold, she ended up being recruited to work at the Office of Community Services, but she started with the mayor's office. Mm-hmm. And young lady, Asia.
Angel? Our Angel trainer?
After the program ended.
Tola, if you could repeat where you dropped off when you were talking about Asia.
Asia Wallace ended up leaving the program. Well, after the funding was over, she ended up, going to get a job in law enforcement. But so they did a lot of the outreach support where we ended up having recruiting 4 navigators. So we had about 5 to 6 people at any time up until June 3rd. Funding.
And then you kind of had to shift to COVID stuff then too, right? Didn't you have to help out in?
Before I got the funding for No Harm, I recruited and hired and ran the African American Take Care team, and then once the money was moved from the council, then both teams were under Laura Gutierrez. So then I was just managing the No Harm team. Once the funding became available.
So that's all. I think we're talking the same thing, Alderman Gay, that later in the agenda, that it's so important that we have this meeting so we can prioritize before we all are, fighting with each other during budget review. Have a plan. But this is a big part of it. That's all I want to say. This is a huge part of it. I believe. That's my own feelings.
Yeah, I would completely agree. And like I said, this is not to step on any toes, but this is also an overview of our committee, human welfare. And so I think just advancing the conversation, first and foremost, lets our constituency know that we are taking the issues of crime serious in our community. And two, lets our staff know who are in these support services for whether it be community or in social services or public safety services, that, we kind of haven't given up on them as well, because it's frustrating for the staff to, be in programming, be in a role for 6 months, build relationships with communities, get programs started, and then the funding cuts off and it's just, they're never heard from again after a fiscal date. That's unfortunate to the community and the staff. And so I think it would be great if we could just maybe analyze those things over the next couple of months. I think, do we start the budget in the first week of April or?
Yeah. We, glad you asked. Cause I set up.
I think you sent out the agenda, correct?
I did when I said, be there. Yeah. We're sticking to what we did last year. I guess that was, except we learned lessons learned. We definitely give more time to police. So yeah, we get the budget. It's introduced April 11th. Then we have a work session to understand it April 14th. And then the following April 15th to May 6th, we have those departmental meetings. And
that's about 4 weeks for the first introduction of the budget.
Yeah. And then that we have it continues to June 6th is our deadline, and then we have that time frame to get our amendments in. And
perfect. Yeah. Any other questions from the committee at this time for Adetola? I think also, hold on, let me just check. Okay, yeah, just for Tola, as it relates to programming and operation.
Yeah, I have another question, Tola. Where do you feel like you're not getting the support? I mean, where do you feel like you're not getting the support, if you can speak frankly?
I don't know that I can speak frankly, but I will say that I think just as it relates to a funding priority, a lot of times I understand how things kind of work a little bit, is that like it's not a problem until it's a problem, but my thing has always been prevention is key. So, I think just making it a funding priority might be a problem. Now, I will say that I did kind of reference some parts of the American Recovery Act and the CARES Act that the federal, mission was to fund violence intervention. So I think that was, that's what helped make the pilot happen. But I don't know that at the time, trying to prevent violence was a funding priority. And I'll just say this: it's not nothing I took personal, because in the world of these type of programs, prevention is always the lowest funded thing. So even if it comes to opioid overdoses or drug prevention, that's always the least funded activity. So I just thank that y'all for even having this conversation, but also the fact that we were able to create a pilot. So just want to say that.
I think it's the only thing that can break the cycle, but we're at a critical mass right now where we have to do these sort of reactive things, like full court press, but this is really the only thing that will break the cycle, I think.
Yeah, and that's something that Dr. Nalesh, he wanted a kind of a long-term program. So we wrote the proposal for 3 years. So that's just something else I wanted to add on, that we were looking, they're even looking again that this is something that it will be a long-term program that they'll fund.
Yeah, and I just want to add, I saw one a policeman at the sock burning. I forgot his name. and Gavin told me this too, and I don't know exactly, but one of the shootings this past weekend, one of them, the police were there. I mean, they were within 10 feet. So you hear constituents saying, police, police, police. I just thought that was very telling. They knew the police were there, however many feet away, and nothing was going to stop them.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think the more we can get in front of some of this, the better. Just want to add that.
Exactly. And I don't want to get into too much public safety discussion here, just out of respect, but everybody's on point in this conversation that we're having. Tola's on point in saying that obviously he needs the funding to be able to run these intervention programs. I think Alderwoman Tierney, you mentioned a very important piece too in the ARP funding. What would be helpful from our city attorney's office is if we could get the exact language as it relates to how those funds can be used, because if I'm not mistaken, we're expecting $3 million in this upcoming budget from the American Rescue Plan Act money. And it would be, listen, I'm not saying we need the whole $3 million, but I'm saying if we could take $500,000 of $3 million, 500,000 of $3 million. I mean, I've never had $3 million, but if I did, I can tell you, if I could spend $500,000 to help crime, I would do it. So if we could do that to put toward programming and staffing for this program, that would be significant. As he's noted, he has had conversations with the counties, but they need commitments from their city partners. They need us to get on board and to know that the program is legitimate. And so I think that it takes us stepping up there. The verbiage would be helpful because I think the mistake is often made that, the American Rescue Plan Act money is for public safety. That means that it has to be used for salaries. And that's exactly what we did over the last 2 years is we took a majority of that money and put it to public safety salaries when we could have used a lot of that for interventions. He just mentioned, I think, Tola, did you say you got 50,000 from the original go around or 75? How much was it?
The original program was 75,000. I think it was for half a year.
Okay, 75,000. Yeah. And so it's definitely doable. And just, I think it's something for us to think about. And as my colleague from Ward 5 mentioned, it's definitely shocking that an individual could think that they could get away with shooting somebody within X amount of feet from police. And I think here is, without again getting into too much public safety, where we could be, however, we could run the programming and we could also fund the police. We can do both at the exact same time. And I know that the chief has made it clear that in the budget that they would like to fund I think homicide and cold case units, which have a lot to do with community trust and, ability for them to feel safe and speak with these detectives and staff the office so that they have the appropriate amount of manpower. I think we can do all of that. I really would hope that we could get the appropriate number of officers and do the programming that we need for VIP in this upcoming budget. But again, that's why I thought it's important to continue this conversation from last week. Any other questions from my colleagues before we maybe turn it over to a different topic?
No.
Okay, awesome. Tola, it would be great, and I hate to put a deadline on you, but maybe if by, and I'm trying to see if there's no holidays or anything coming up, maybe if by the 28th, which would be next Monday, if you could get that VIP description that you all sent to the county to my colleagues here on the body, that would be helpful for them to just, again, see what actually the programming pieces are in the VIP program.
I can get it to you tonight.
I'm sorry?
I can get it to you tonight.
Oh, that's perfect. Oh, that's even better. That's even better. That would be, just so helpful if you could shoot that over to us.
Sure will.
Awesome. Any other questions? Awesome. I think we're good. Thank you both, Tola. And then also just want to recognize really quickly Tiana, who has been on and working with Tola in the mayor's office. I want to say for about 6 months, but I don't want to, misstate it. Tiana, if you wanted to just jump in and say something.
Yes, thank you, Dewan, for the invitation. It's been almost 2 years now.
Oh, I'm God. I'm sorry.
Well, Tiana, could you explain how you transitioned from different programming and to what led you to the NAM program coordinator?
Sure, I apologize, you guys. So during the pandemic, I started as a Take Care coordinator with the Take Care program. And then from there, I stayed with them for additional contractual term and then moved on to as the community outreach support navigator of the No Harm program. And then having success there, decided to take on some bigger endeavors and took on the role as the coordinator of the Naptown Anti-Dope Movement.
Which is important. I said 6 months, but you're right. The 2 years felt very, very fast because pandemic and everything was going on. But you have really been here throughout all of that, the food drives, everything. And so grateful, obviously for you being on board here. And that's a part of the funding. That's what we're risking here, losing those support services that, she's been able to establish and create in the community, along with the Office of Community Caring Services, which I think is vital in this fight too. And so those are, that's kind of what's at stake here. I'm glad that we got to hear from everybody. Any other questions from my colleague?
Thank you, Tiana.
Awesome.
You're welcome, Ms. Ellie. Pleasure to see you.
Good to see you.
We will move to the next item on the agenda, which is legislation. Thank you, Tola. Yes, thank you all. Appreciate it.
Well, that's right. We have legislation.
We do. Just one piece tonight, which is R1322, Housing Authority of the City of Annapolis Project Prioritization, for the purpose of approving a resolution that states the city's desire to prioritize all housing authority of the City of Annapolis redevelopment projects. It's very self-explanatory, but I thought it was important to come before the council. I'm sorry, not before the council, before the committee, for us to lay eyes on it as it has to do with housing, and really take the opportunity maybe to delay for an amendment. I think that it could use more teeth and be more specific in some of the requests or recommendations for housing projects in the city of Annapolis. So let's just kind of open discussion here on this piece of legislation. I'm not sure if you all had an opportunity to read the staff report, but I'll just run over it really quickly, in particular for the general public. They've listed 4 priorities. The first being affirmatively pursue programs that have substantive effects on affordable housing and will support negotiation and engagement with regulative county, state, and federal officials, as well as prioritizing HACA development projects. 2, hold weekly meetings internally to make sure that a review of HACA redevelopments projects is expedited, and also continues to hold quarterly meetings with HACA to discuss the status of HACA developments. That one is so important, because if we just learned anything from the closed session or the work session that we had last week, is that the council doesn't know anything that's going on as it relates to HACA and some of the closed door meetings that they've been having with the administration. And so my recommendation is to improve the verbiage there to include the council or at least a designee. Number 3, designate an employee within the city government whose jobs and responsibilities include, among other things, facilitation of communications between HACA and the city, and who act as an advocate and promoter of redevelopment of the HACA properties, and assist with identifying, obtaining financial options to potential developers for public-private development of the HACA properties, and acting as liaison between HACA and the City of Annapolis facilitated redevelopment. We basically have that with Denise Ruffin, as we figured out last week. And she's been here, I think they stayed for almost close to 90 days. And I think all of us may have had a chance to have conversation with her, at least in one of these meetings. And then number 4, assign an employee's development project liaison to provide guidance regarding the development requirements and associated review process in order to expedite the same. The last three kind of seem redundant, but all nonetheless important. So I'd like to open it up for discussion, and maybe we can talk on a potential date to add some amendments. Alderwoman Tierney?
Yeah, thank you. I see that we have Joelle on the call on the meeting. Could we get a synopsis of the genesis of this and how it may or may not relate to the consent decree and how much liberty we have with it if it is related to the consent decree?
This is Joel. Good afternoon, everyone. Evening. This is Joel Braithwaite from the City of Annapolis Office of Law. This is specifically a provision in the consent decree. What we realized is that despite in the past year, the City of Annapolis has done many things towards working with HACA. HACA complained that we did not do this one provision of the consent decree, which had a deadline on it, that the city create this resolution, despite the fact that the city was actively prioritizing and doing all the things, and then that there were no actual projects in redevelopment besides Newtown 20, which had been out of the redevelopment process because we had given the various grading permits and the other permits, and they were in the building phase, and there was nothing for the city to do up until recently. So the city wanted to reduce to writing the resolution, the sense of the council that the projects to be prioritized in accordance with the agreement that the plaintiffs and the city and the federal court has agreed to in the form of the consent decree. And with respect to what can be modified and how, the agreement is the agreement, and we must do what the agreement says. And my opinion is it really depends on what the amendment is before I could really comment on does it help or hurt the consent decree. But what we must do is what the consent decree requires, and this is what we agreed to do in the consent decree.
Thank you.
Any other questions from my colleagues? Well, in particularly, I'd like to make an amendment to the whereas on lines 14 through 17. On page 1, it says, whereas in accordance with paragraph 26 and 27 of the consent decree, city staff is committed to hold weekly meetings internally to make sure that the review of HACA's redevelopment projects is expedited, and also continues to hold quarterly meetings with HACA to discuss the status of the redevelopment. I'd like to include city staff and at least one designee of the Housing and Human Welfare Committee is committed to hold weekly meetings internally. And I think the reason that's important is because we are noted as a committee, whether we know it or not, the Housing and Human Welfare and the Housing Community Equity Development Commission as an integral part of this consent decree. If we are not attending the meetings and being briefed, how can we be an integral and consenting part of the consent decree? That has to be modified. I'd like to maybe hear from the city attorney if possible.
Mike Lyles? You would like to hear from Mike Lyles, you're saying?
Assistant city attorney, I'm sorry.
Okay. With respect to that, there's something called separation of powers. And separation of powers requires that legislators legislate, executives exect, and execute. The separation of powers would prevent, for example, city council members from negotiating contracts and doing things which belongs firmly in the hands of the executive. What you have here is the sense of the council that in one way to look at the situation, the council has agreed to the consent decree, has read the consent decree, and they previously approved the consent decree. This is just an additional step from the consent decree saying to the city manager that you wish him to prioritize all HACA redevelopment projects. With that in mind, I'm not sure that Maryland law would allow for, if it would allow for you to receive briefings, yes, but actively involved in or dealing with the work of staff, there seems to be some prohibitions around that in the city charter and in Maryland law about the role a legislative body can play in the executive functions. For example, if you look at the Maryland State Assembly, they can pass laws on how they will like various agencies to act and react, but they cannot mandate that any agency, well, they can, but they cannot direct the function of an agency to do that which the law says. That's still a separate function of the judiciary to compel the executive to do that which the legislative commanded that they do.
That makes perfect sense, as it relates to the separation of powers. Do I agree? Absolutely not. Because I'm not sure how you can ask a body to support a consent decree and support the actions requested by the consent decree without having input on how those actions are taking place. So
you can't have input.
If we're not able to attend the meetings, then I would ask that in accordance with paragraphs 26 and 27. Okay.
I'm sorry. You can receive reports on what the staff has done, but you cannot direct the work of the staff. So you can receive information. And if you would like to change the way the law operates, City of Annapolis City Code is what you have control over. You could pass any law in the City of Annapolis City Code that directs the executive on how to act. So again, this is a resolution. This is a law that you can pass to tell the executive how to act. The limit of the legislator is to create the law. The limit of the executive is to interpret the law and execute the law. And the limit of the judiciary is to interpret the law. All three have a part to play in what the law is.
So really quickly, Alderman Tierney, before I ask my, let me question. So I kind of am following. Obviously, if we're involved in the actual meeting, there could be a conflict of interest with us, enforcing staff to do X amount of work. And so if to avoid that, is it possible that we say in the resolution, still here within in paragraphs or lines 14 through 17, we're saying in accordance with paragraphs 26 and 27 of the consent decree, city staff is committed to holding weekly meetings internally to make sure that the review of HACA redevelopment projects is expedited, and also continues to hold quarterly meetings with HACA to discuss the status of the HACA redevelopment and includes specific provision for the members of the Housing and Human Welfare Committee to receive weekly updates on those meetings, because I think that has to be in writing, because otherwise, we may get an update one week and not another. And I think it would just be helpful if, every Friday we were getting an update on what the city staff from the Office of Law, Planning and Zoning, and Public Works are doing to benefit HACA's redevelopment.
But can't you do that through a request from the city council to the city manager? I think you have a mechanism by which to do that. You could write whatever you want to write with respect to how you wish to build the resolution to be amended. But I'll just say that there's an opportunity for you to receive that information. And if you believe that the city council should receive weekly updates from staff, then you could write it into the bill as an amendment, and it will be dealt with in due course before the city council.
I would just only for this specific items, and it doesn't even have to be the full body, just this committee. But before we, to the verbiage, I'd like to hear from Alderwoman Tierney.
Oh, thank you. I think, unfortunately, or whatever way you look at it, the key words on this, is in accordance with the consent decree. So just I think what I heard Joelle say is, the assistant city attorney say, is that we, the council, did approve the consent decree as written. This is in lockstep with the consent decree. So if we amend it, then we are implying that we would like to amend the consent decree, which is sort of a big deal. You know, it has to go back to whatever, Joelle, whatever. So that's, I guess I get those guardrails there. So I do understand that. So I think what Alderman Gay is asking for is something that is a request that we get a report, and we can do that, as you suggest, Joelle, from the city manager directly without jeopardizing the language in the consent decree. Is that a fair statement?
And just to be clear really quickly, Alderwoman.
Yeah.
The consent decree, paragraphs 26 and 27, the verbiage is extremely vague. Within 90 days of the effective date of this consent decree, the city will prepare a resolution stating its desire to prioritize all HACA projects. Upon submission of an application, city staff will hold. So it's basically copying 20 and 27 and putting it in this resolution. I'm not sure that we're amending the consent decree more as amending the requirements of city staff. And I think that's where the assistant city attorney was saying we could try another avenue through the city manager. I think solidifying it in a resolution just makes it all more permanent.
But probably not this resolution, right?
I think that's what the debate lies.
I think, Alderman Gay, you are noticing that we are beyond the 90 days from the effective date of the consent decree. That's the first thing you should notice.
Mm-hmm.
And so the city promised to do this probably a year ago, and it wasn't done for any number of reasons. Primarily, our resources were focused on inspecting the housing authority and also prioritizing all of our efforts to help with the Choice Neighborhood Grant, which we were able to successfully win, which took a Herculean effort on behalf of the city and city staff. The resources of city staff are limited, as are the city's budgets, as the prior conversation you just had. So I need there to be a balance of practical understanding of how the government works, tempered with the aspirational idea that any city council member wants a weekly update of HACA redevelopment efforts when there's currently only one project. Well, I'll say 0 projects under redevelopment. It's actually being built and it's actually up for certificate of occupancy. So currently there are no properties that have a application before even the planning commission to activate this consent decree requirement. So read the last paragraph to understand when anything for a weekly or a quarterly meeting is required. Currently, as we understand it, there are no projects from HACA that will qualify for this resolution. And that's probably why the resolution wasn't pushed previously, because we were actively doing the work to prioritize the redevelopment of Newtown 20, passing the resolutions, working on the Choice Neighborhood grants, actively inspecting the properties, and everyone seems to be very interested in redevelopment, but not very interested in inspection, which is the heart of the consent decree. But again, I'll defer.
But I would. Oh, was it you, Brooks? I was just going to say the consent decree already gives us a task, which is the consent decree gives us a task, specifically does call us out, Housing and Human Welfare Committee. I can read it. Will review and consider the affordable and workforce housing legislation passed by the Anne Arundel County, blah, blah, blah. The city agreed the Housing and Human Welfare Committee will report back to the full city council on their good faith efforts to consider adopting legislation that is substantially similar to that found in the county. It already gives us a task that we should focus on. I just want to bring that up, and you're doing that, Alderman Gay. I mean, you're succeeding in doing that.
Yes, so we will note that the Affordable Housing Committee provided a presentation in October prior to the election, showing what their input was on how the city code can be changed to affect the purposes, since the Anne Arundel County zoning laws are different from the city's zoning laws, and it couldn't be readily assimilated, and how to achieve the purpose or achieve a better purpose. And we need legislation coming out of your committee going to the city council. And that is something that we promised the court was going to get done expeditiously, because there was an election and therefore the old city council expired. Under the new city council, we do need that work to come from this committee so that the council can look at the work and figure out what, if anything, it wishes to do about affordable housing and the recommendation from the Affordable Housing Committee.
Okay. Right. I'm just, so while we're on that subject, can I bring this up, Juan? That's why I wrote that resolution. And earlier this morning, I sent you the final copy because we met with Kathy, we met with the equity group, and then we said, we want Spa Road to be affordable housing. So I wrote that resolution, and hopefully you guys will co-sponsor it. Joelle, would that count as part of our, would that count?
I think that the Affordable Housing Committee has provided a legislative solution. And I think that this body's consider, the meeting was held in October 25th, but now we need to have resolution, if there is going to be legislation, if this committee decides to recommend to the city council legislation to affect the purposes of that mission, then I think that is necessary. Otherwise, I'm not sure that is something that someone could point to and say the city did not fulfill under the consent decree. And again, this is why this is before you, because we weren't able to say to the court, oh, Judge, we forgot to tick off this box. So this box must be ticked off as well as that box, because all of these things are under the eye of the federal court, which has contempt power over all the parties before it.
Okay. So it's a check the box kind of thing. Huh.
So I'm figuring, obviously, there are legal concerns, so we can maybe just take a vote on the resolution, and if necessary, we'll pass, or I shouldn't say pass, we'll bring forward another resolution to see if we can get it passed. Just to be updated on the process. Like I said, I just think it's important. I don't think that staff is not working. I've had fabulous meetings with Teresa, Melissa, Eric, Jacqueline, Michael Malinoff, who I love, the whole crew really, as it relates to housing development in HACA and on other properties. And so I definitely think we're moving. I just think it's critical that we are involved in the process, because it's nothing like getting a project together and then presenting it, and there are 8 different issues that you didn't expect from 8 different councilmen, and they scratch the project, or you got to go back to square one. And so I just think the communication is essential, and so I definitely think that we just try to bring that in another resolution or amendment.
Do you guys want to co-sponsor it? I'm the only co-sponsor. I feel like.
I haven't had I apologize, I haven't had the chance to read it yet.
Okay.
A job schedule, but let me read and get back to you.
No problem.
I obviously am supportive of the consent decree. My problem with co-sponsoring is that I have concerns with the
yeah. Oh no, I understand.
With the original verbiage. But you know what? Go ahead, add me as a co-sponsor if you could, Takia. Just because the intent is there,
Yeah.
And I think that's what's important. Or could we get prepared to? Is there a motion to move R1322 before the full council for a vote?
I recommend a positive recommendation.
I second a favorable recommendation.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Awesome. And thank you so much, Joelle, for staying for this and just kind of giving us a overview on this. I know we got it pretty fast last Thursday, so everybody couldn't have had enough time to read it. It was just not enough time, but thank you for coming in before us and explaining it in better detail.
Thank you. Thank you, Joelle.
Thank you all.
Our next item on the agenda would be the item that we included at the beginning of our meeting. We amended the agenda to include a recommendation to the full city council for a emergency closed session as it relates to public safety / human welfare in the city of Annapolis. And so, Takia, do we have to have a motion to have discussion on that? How would that work with it being added just now?
No, you don't have to have a motion. You can just go into discussion. Because you already voted to add it to your agenda.
And would the closing motion then be for either favorable or unfavorable recommendation?
Yes.
Awesome. Okay. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
So I think we kind of really discussed this in the beginning and middle of our meeting as it relates to some of the funding concerns. Alderwoman Tierney, I loved your point and saying that our budget priorities for public safety have to be aligned. Otherwise, we may find ourselves with a $3 million price tag on a number of projects. And so for that reason alone, I think it's important. But I'll open it up to my colleagues for discussion.
I think you said it great. I think you said it great. You almost made the motion, Alderman Gay. We want an emergency session to discuss and coordinate our priorities so that we are all on the same page. Sorry, Brooks.
I'm just saying, I think it's a good idea.
Yeah, it's a good idea. Who gets that, Takia? I mean, how does this work?
Yeah, that was my next question. Would it be a letter and maybe signed by all three of us, sent to the mayor and the chair, or?
I would have to check on that. Is the assistant city attorney still on?
Joelle, if you're still available, could you? I think I see him, but I'm not sure. Maybe he might have to step away.
I think once you get the 5 signatures.
Yeah, I'm thinking that as well. They may require the 5 for us to actually move forward with it. But if us three could maybe ask for the additional signatures of our colleagues, that would be helpful. Because we'll need 5 votes to meet. I know that from past experience.
Well, we got 3 here, and with the letter, I mean, I don't think we'll get much opposition if we all put a letter forward.
Yeah, I know Karma is definitely a yes.
So
awesome.
we do the letter. I believe Takia can auto sign for us, and if not, I work from home Wednesdays. I can come in and sign something at City Hall.
Perfect. And that sounds like a plan for me. Should verbiage come from law or us? I guess that's a question we'll possibly get an answer to tomorrow. And if it needs to be created by the committee, then I can put something together and send it to my colleagues tomorrow. I'm free in the mornings, obviously, but have work in the evenings. And so we can work through the details, but nonetheless, let's maybe get a vote on the consensus of this committee to move forward with a letter requesting a emergency city council meeting as it relates to human welfare and public safety.
I make that motion.
I will second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None? Awesome. So we will get the details figured out on that tomorrow. We'll be in touch with the Office of Law, as well as with the city clerk's office to figure out coordinating signatures, etc. I think that moves us to the next item on our agenda. But before we get there, we'll do maybe some good of the order and then adjournment. Anything anybody need to say or? We keep it fast and snappy. That's why I like this.
We're efficient.
We know what we got to do. We got a task and we coming to get it done. So that's perfect. I appreciate all of your time today. Again, I'm so sorry I was late. Yeah, looking forward to it. I will definitely be in touch tomorrow with details as it relates to our closed session.
All right, cool.
Yeah, folks.
All right.
Make a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed?
Bye, guys.
None?
Good night.
Good night. Awesome.
Good night, Takia.
Thank you all. See you all soon. Be safe.